I need to be honest with you. For years, I've been critical of electric cars. Every time someone told me EV are zero emission, clean, green, something fell off. Because I'd seen the headline about lithium mining in South America, I'd read about cobalt from the Congo, I'd heard that making a single EV battery produces as much as pollution as driving a gas car for years. And I kept thinking, are we being sold a story here? Are electric cars actually better for the planet? Or are we just moving the pollution somewhere else and calling it progress? So I decided to do what I should have done a long time ago. I stopped trusting the headline and I went looking for the actual data. In reality, this video was for me because I needed to search the actual reality behind it. But after I found my response, I really think it's interesting for you all to know what there is behind this shift that the government are pushing with all their energy. I pulled studies from MIT, from International Council on Clean Transportation, from journals published in the last few months. And what I found? Well, it surprised me. Today I'm gonna walk you through exactly what I learned, the good and the bad and the complicated. And by the end, I think you will have a clear picture of whether the electric cars are really the solution. Let's start with the parts that always bother me the most, the manufacturing. Building an electric car creates more pollution upfront than building a gas car, period. A typical electric car generates between 11 and 14 tons of CO2 during manufacturing. A comparable petrol car, about 7 to 10 tons. The difference, roughly 4 tons, comes almost entirely from one thing, the battery. Making a lithium battery is incredibly energy intensive. Why? You need to mine lithium in South America or in Australia. You need cobalt, often from Democratic Republic of Congo, when mining conditions have raised serious human rights concerns. You need nickel, graphite, all materials that have to be extracted, processed and refined. And here's the kicker. Processing this material requires heat, sometimes 800, 1000 degrees Celsius, which today is mostly achieved by running fossil fuels. A 2026 study from India comparing vehicles found something striking. Looking at the entire cycle emission, that means from mining to manufacturing to driving and to disposal, the battery electric vehicles actually had the highest manufacturing emission of any option they studied. So the EV was the dirtiest option on the lot. If you buy an electric car, you start in a home. You have already spent more environmental resources before you drive a single mile. Looking at this data, we all think, how can be this the possible solution? Then, my other concern was, what happens when the battery dies? Aren't we just creating a mountain of toxic waste that will poison the planet for generations? The honest answer is, we are not where we need to be. Right now, the modern recycling processes can recover up to 95% of battery materials. And also remember guys, that can doesn't mean that the country actually recycled this percentage. But this research is about the product, not the system. So overall, it's a good news. On the other hand, the bad news is that the infrastructure isn't fully scaled yet. We don't have enough recycling plants to handle the wave of batteries that will start retiring in the future. However, and this is crucial, battery recycling is advancing fast. A 2026 technical paper from CAA International found that the end-of-life strategy can reduce recycled emissions by 30 to 40% through better recycling methods. Specifically, they found that moving from the older biometallurgy, means burning everything down, to newer hydrometallurgy recycling using chemical solution can cut recycling emission nearly in half. A study published just this month in the Korean Journal of Chemical Engineering is working on something called direct recycling, where instead of breaking the batteries down into raw materials, they regenerate the actual electric material themselves. This preserves the structure of the battery and uses far less energy. Now let's compare this to a gas car though. What happens to a gas car at the end of life? The steel gets recycled, sure, but the fuel, the gasoline you burn across 15 years, it's gone, vanished into the atmosphere. You can't recycle carbon dioxide. Gasoline is one-way ticket to pollution. On the other hand, the battery materials can circle in a closed loop. In theory, the cycle has been studied this way. Battery powers your car for 15-20 years. Then, when its capacity drops to around 70-80%, it gets its second life in a stationary energy storage, like backup power for building or for farm. Then, after 10 or 15 years, it gets recycled, with up to 95% of material recovered to make new batteries. That's a 25-35 years total useful life. So yes, recycling isn't perfect yet, but it's proving fast. And unlike gasoline, which you burn once and it's gone forever, batteries are part of a circular economy that only can get better. Then, we have the emission during the use of the two types of car. Let me put in this perspective with some numbers. A 2025 study from Spain tracked emissions across the full vehicle life cycle. Here's what they found for a typical passenger car over 200,000 kilometers. For the gas vehicle, around 52 tons of CO2. For the electric car, around 24 tons. That's less than half. And this includes the dirty manufacturing phase. It includes the battery, includes everything. Here's the thing that finally convinced me. So after all this research, where do I land? Think about in this way. An electric car's environmental debt is like a loan. You pay it once, upfront, when the car is built. A gas car, instead, it takes out a tiny loan every single day. Every time you start the engine, every mile you drive, and those tiny loans add up. Multiple studies now agree on when that crossover happens. 2026 studies from UK found that the electric car becomes cleaner than petrol cars after 20 or 30,000 miles. For the average driver, that's about 2 or 3 years. Then we have another study from the Society of Automotive Engineers, and they looked at the Indian market, where the electric grid is still relatively coal-heavy, and found that EVs demonstrate 14 to 38% lower CO2 emissions over a 150,000 kilometers lifetime. So even in a country with a dirtier grid, the EV still wins in a long run. Very close, but still wins. Here's my conclusion. Electric cars can be the solution, but only if we are honest about what that requires. It requires cleaning up the supply chain. It requires investing in recycling infrastructure now, not in the future. And here's something we don't talk about enough. The transition itself needs to be sustainable for the people making it. Right now, EV are expensive, interest can be higher. People will only switch into EV when feel practical, affordable and reliable, without requiring lifestyle of compromises. So here's what I believe now. Electric cars are absolutely better for the planet. The math is clear. But for the transition to actually work, for it to be sustainable now, not just in the future, we need to be honest about the challenges and give people solutions that work for their lives.